All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Anderson. I'm the Park and Rec Director for the city. Today, we are so fortunate to have students from the UW Landscape Architect program here. This presentation will be recorded and available for our friends in Monona and beyond to look at as we go through the process with San Damiano. We participated with this department in 2017 during our university project alliance and came up with some really great student projects. Eric Schukart, program director for this program, discussed with the city on ways that students could be engaged in a semester-long program. So we're excited today. I'm going to introduce Eric and then we're going to get along with the students. These are conceptual plans and just for planning purposes only. It's a great student project. As most of you in this room know, that the official consulting project will be kicking off here this summer with a firm that needs to be selected yet. So without further ado, Eric Schukart, UW Landscape Architect. Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming today, guys. The students are excited to share their work with you. We kicked off this project about 5-6 weeks ago. And so we went out to the site, did a site visit with Jake, went into the house, went along the lake shore, walked through all edges of the property. And then after that, the students worked on some site analysis and inventory. And this was already presented about 3.5 weeks ago to Jake. He came into our design studio on campus. And along with what you see up here in the site inventory and analysis, there are some precedent studies that they also presented. But just for the sake of time, they're just going to focus on the design stuff that they had pulled together from the past 3 to 4 weeks here. So with that, each group will have about 20 minutes to present, and then we'll open up to comments and questions for the students. Students, when you're up in front, please introduce yourselves before you begin the presentation, and then tell them where you're from as well. So thank you again for joining us and letting us work with you on this project. So, okay, team one.
Hi everybody, I'm Alexis. I'm from Yorkville, Illinois.
Louder, please. Louder, so we can hear you.
My name's Alexis. I'm from Yorkville, Illinois.
My name's Hannah. I'm from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin.
My name is Willem, and I'm from Westchester, New York.
I'm Julia, and I'm from Aquatico, Wisconsin.
So this is our conceptual framework plan called Lakeview Gardens for the San Damiano site. So our vision for this site is to convert the San Damiano property into a multi-generational park for the Monona community. By incorporating program elements that enhance the existing landscape for active living, Lakeview Gardens aims to invite the community to benefit from a formerly inaccessible, now approachable public space. So the first goal of our project is to convert the existing property into a signature park for the Monona area and surrounding communities. Second goal is to improve the pedestrian, bike, vehicle, and bus access to and from the park. And then third, create an educational experience to recognize and appreciate the indigenous history of the site. 4, restore the native habitats and ecosystems of the site to attract wildlife and encourage biodiversity. And number 5, design a space that affords active and passive recreation opportunities for people of all ages and abilities. So at the northernmost part of our site, we labeled this by number, and then that corresponds to the elements here. So at number 1, we have the accessible kayak launch and then a parking area for people launching those kayaks. Number 2 is a boardwalk that goes over the existing wet detention pond, and then we're also proposing expanding that as well. And then number 3 is fire pit inlets along the shoreline, and then here you can see kind of a character imagery snapshot of what a boardwalk and that shoreline condition might look like.
Our next site elements are the bus stop that is along the northern part of the site that will allow for more accessibility and more variety of transportation into and out of the site. The farm-to-table gardens are number 5, which can be pulled from an inspiration picture down here, which would allow for greenhouse space, a variety of planters that would include raised planters and ground level planters for a variety of sizes of plants and types, and the nature playground, which is over here and is pulled from inspiration from this as well. This would be used from existing materials on the site, possibly remove trees or other natural materials that would allow for more of an immersive experience and appeal to a more wider demographic and allow for some more imaginative play among the kids.
The seventh element in our framework plan along the western side of the site is a lit walkway, which will be bordered by paper birch on either side, which does grow well here in Wisconsin. And for the paving for that, it'll be stepping stone pavers to be in keeping with sort of the natural feel for our site, with the goal of not changing too much of the existing landscape. The next element, number 8, which spans this entire open green space, will be more of a traditional park space with open lawn, park benches, and a lot of canopy cover. So that could be used for picnics, open gatherings, and just passive recreation. And then over here, this gray spot, it might be hard to see, but this is a terrace boardwalk and pier, which extends out from the San Damiano house and is aimed towards getting a greater connection from Lake Monona. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's an accessibility ramp. So right now, the shoreline is not too accessible. So the goal was to expand that shoreline to make it a space that people can use and utilize that amazing view you have out to the lake.
Then at number 10, we have a historic narrative garden, which would kind of serve as a welcoming space to the house, which we are proposing to convert into a restaurant. At number 11, we have 2 parking spots, which would offer, along with the lot up here, would offer about 75 total parking spaces to serve the site. And then at number 12, we have a B-cycle station as well as a bike rack for those coming to the site via bike.
Alright. Moving on to our next board. The current site has a carriage path that goes up to the San Damiano house, and that's currently the only paved pathway that's there. So right now that's around 0.16 miles, but we're proposing adding 0.86 miles of pathways to the site, which you can see here in the light gray. And then with the Terrace Boardwalk and Pier, that would add an additional 400% increase in ADA accessible shoreline.
All right, and for our section cuts, we have the top section cutting through on this horizontal dotted white line, and the second one we have on this vertical dotted white line. And those just give you an idea of the elements and their relation to each other, as well as how our site elements follow the topography of the site, allowing for that lakeshore access. Our pathways are 8 feet wide as well to allow for more space, bigger groups, more accessibility. So.
Moving on to some of the site diagramming that we did. Right here we have a circulation diagram where we broke our paths and other modes of transportation up into primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. So Monona Drive, obviously a lot of transportation is happening along there, so that's our primary circulation route. And then for secondary paths, we have the existing sidewalk that runs along the whole site, as well as the main loops that we have within our site. We are proposing to make a connection through a current private lot that would connect to the Lake Monona bike loop. And then for our tertiary level of paths, we have the boardwalk that we're proposing, as well as the paths that go through the more natural area of the site and the garden, as well as through the ornamental historic garden. For this diagram, we have lighting and drainage mapped. So our yellow dots show where we are proposing to add lighting to make the site a bit more safe and usable during the evening. Something to note is this walk that we are kind of focusing on there to create like an experience with maybe like draped lights. And then for drainage, we're proposing like a bioswale in the parking lot to collect this water from that surface, and then drainage in there. With all of the pervious pavement that we're proposing in this area, we thought drainage along the shoreline would keep those pollutants out of the lake, as well as to assist with erosion along the shoreline. And then we also are proposing drainage up here near the wet detention basin to help with drainage over there with our prairie that we're proposing.
All right, and then for specific vegetation on the site, we are proposing removing some of the existing tree canopy, but replacing it with some new trees. So replacing that with here, the paper birch, so that would be about 12 paper birch trees that would be planted, and then proposing some screening here with arborvitaes and boxwood. And then proposing in this parking lot swale area, adding 4 or 5 quaking aspen trees, as well as some native seed mixes. And then here in the historical wildflower garden, that would be a seed mix of like purple coneflower, some lilac, that kind of thing. And then up here near that wet detention pond, there's a lot of vegetation already existing, but we are proposing to plant more of like a native prairie grass area, so it would require less mowing and maintenance, and then attract pollinator species, as well as help kind of reduce the amount of runoff going into the lake from that point. And then moving over here, we each picked a focus area to go more into depth. So the first focus area is the kayak launch and bioretention boardwalk. Second is the community gardens and nature trail. Third is the Terrace boardwalk inlet walkway. And then lastly, we have our historical narrative garden. So with the new boardwalk and kayak launch, this is a plan view of what that site would look like. So as you can see, we are proposing buying the lot directly adjacent to the site that's currently vacant. There's not very many trees, it's pretty flat. There is a 10-foot change from here to the lake, but I'm proposing that we put a switchback ramp going down so that it's ADA accessible and it's less of an extreme drop down into the water. So labeled by numbers up here, this is the connection to the existing path. This is kind of an overlook, so you can look directly out onto the lake. And then as these is just the site vegetation. And then at number 4, that would be the actual kayak launch itself. So with that, it would be a launch where you're able to slide down a set of stairs into your kayak and then go out from there. So people in wheelchairs are able to use it, and then that would be the only kayak launch with ADA accessibility in the Madison area on Lake Monona. And then moving on, that switchback path, as I said before, and then number 8 would be part of that wet prairie kind of planting grasses, and then number 10 here, that's just obviously a paved path going in. And then there is also 9 parking stalls for people who are bringing their kayaks to the area so they don't have to walk it all the way from the site. So the main goals of this plan are to promote passive recreation through the immersive boardwalk experience and having a safe and accessible launch for kayaks, stand-up paddleboards, canoes, and then reducing stormwater runoff and improving the lake quality through the planting of native vegetation buffers along the shoreline. So that's going to stop a lot of the runoff, and it can help absorb some of that phosphorus and nitrogen that's coming off of the site and going into the water. And then lastly, just improve biodiversity through conserving the existing tree canopy and then planting new trees on the site as well. So this section cuts from Monona Drive down to Lake Monona this way. So it's cutting through this direct middle, so you can see the kayak launch, going up the ramp, and then where that parking lot would be connecting to the road. And then the second one is just cutting straight down again, but through the boardwalk. So that's kind of showing this existing barrier between that wet pond and Lake Monona. And then the wet pond here, the boardwalk, and then up to the sidewalk where you would enter the site.
All right, and moving on to the community gardens. The vision statement for this section was with public accessibility engagement in mind. The community garden includes elements like greenhouse space, storage, and a variety of garden space to best fit the needs of its users. This space directly builds off of the existing pathway to allow for physical improvement and invite all users of the park into the garden for an immersive experience. The gardens also address the needs of a wide demographic of users, which includes raised planters as well as pollinator gardens, food production area, and large planting space availability. The design goals were to create an accessible garden space where people can plant and care for a variety of plants, design circulation that invites users into the space, and implement a greenhouse that would house gardening tools for the community-sensitive plants and allow area for community food to be grown year-round. The elements of this site include the greenhouse, the pollinator gardens, which would be in this western area of the site, raised planters that would be more centrally located, ground level planters that would be towards the outside near the main pathway, a permeable cobblestone path which would lead through this branching pattern through the site, the flattened gravel path, which includes the nature path and a slightly narrower pathway through the back end of the site, and the main pathway that leads through here. We put the raised planters in the center to kind of provide more of a safe area for food production plants, kind of keep them off that ground level. There are larger planters around the outside for more things like, you could say like watermelon, taller grasses, bigger bushes that you may want to plant for that. I have some perspectives showing more of the character of the site. This could include like more ferns, grasses, stuff out here, butterfly bushes, which would be great for pollinator attraction as well. And the section cuts include the greenhouse, and we have about 10 feet of pathway in between the greenhouse and the first planter, and about 8 feet of pathway in between the planters themselves, allowing for enough space for kind of spreading out, laying your tools out, getting situated, being able to really enjoy yourself in that space. These raised planters could include things like tomatoes, radishes, carrots, and the outside ones could even be watermelon, stuff like that. And this is a larger section cut, including the nature path, which just shows that you can experience like bird watching back in the nature path, allow for dog walking, running, larger groups. We have open lawn space under this canopy for more of a shaded experience before you enter out into the Lake Monona area, kind of allowing that like awe moment. And yeah, that's all I got.
Alright, for the next focus area, we have the Terrace, Boardwalk, and Pier. I don't know if you've been out to the current property, but this is one of the areas with a pretty steep slope down to the water with a small lookout terrace, which we heard from Jake was a really popular destination for people coming to the site. So with those views, we really want to accentuate that with this Terrace, Boardwalk, and Pier without interrupting the landscape too much. So a few of the elements we have are 2 stairway entries at the top and bottom, 5 motorized boat slips, an ADA access ramp that will provide wheelchair access down to the first level of the boardwalk, a multi-use event space which will be open lawn with a pergola in the front. This could be used for anything from weddings to company parties or anything like that. And then an open space plaza in the front of the San Damiano house. So with that goal in mind of not being too intrusive to the landscape, we've scattered a few boulders which will provide, like flat boulders, which will provide seating on the top level of the plaza, as well as down on this first level. As you can see, they're pretty low, but with just one level of a wood planked boardwalk that's about 2 feet above the existing grade, it'll allow for easy access to the water. It doesn't take away from being able to walk along this shoreline, which I'm sure a lot of people would want to do when coming to this feature. And then lastly, it also just provides that connection to Lake Monona that I think is kind of missing right now. So with that in mind, it has a sort of natural circulation coming from this, one of our only built elements, down to the water. Then here's just a section that cuts through, which gives you an idea of how high everything is off the ground. We have the access ramp in orange, might be a little hard to see, but then the boat pier that comes out to the water, and a natural rock wall that'll reduce some of the erosion that's going into the lake, and also just be in keeping with the natural tone of our framework plan.
Right, and lastly, my focus area was the historical narrative garden. Here is my site plan. So the vision that I had for this space was to kind of uniquely tell the history of the site. The site has very rich history that we kind of analyzed previously, and I thought that it would be a good opportunity to include that in the actual physical landscape. So the ornate planters that you see are kind of inspired by traditional Ho-Chunk textile design. I thought that our space really needed kind of a tribute to the indigenous history, so I kind of wanted to emphasize that. So traditional, you can see here in these photos, traditional women's like applique served as the inspiration for these abstracted forms. Going through the plan, we have the plaza kind of on the back side of the house that we are proposing to convert into a restaurant right here. And then the history garden itself, these small teal-colored dots show the location of what would be like small historic exhibits, small like statue artifacts that would provide guests kind of a way to educate themselves as they walk through the site. And then we have our parking lot that connects kind of to the garden itself, and then the existing pathway. So yeah, you can see here the sort of like the process I went through of abstracting these ribbon work designs that are popular for formal wear. I have two sections. The first here cutting through vertically, you can see the path and how it kind of leads you in. The house in the background, we have the planters, which are about 1.5 feet off of the ground. This other section kind of cuts along the bottom and looks at the site from the parking lot. So you can see the plaza in the back, and then the planters in front of the house, which I'm imagining being planted with a mixture of ornamental and wildflower plants. So lilac, maybe like orange tiger lily, brown and black-eyed Susan, butterfly weed.
Thank you all for your time. Does anybody have any questions? Now, does anybody have any questions?
Hold on, guys, stay up there so I can get your picture. Next year. Hi, thank you.
Yes.
Just curious, do you have any plan for how you might look for historic artifacts that might be buried on that site, and that we know the potential for a lot of it to be covered by that?
I know we did some site analysis before starting our design of the project. The boards over there on the bottom is a timeline, so that shows some of the research we did looking into what could be in that garden, but it's not, I don't think it's fully fleshed out what would be shown
I think
on those
not,
features.
It wouldn't be like artifacts, anything discovered on the site. Like there may be mounds here, and any of those artifacts would obviously be left. But this is saying like more of a representation of those artifacts in some sort of material, whether that's like a brass little statue or something like that. But yeah, definitely more research would have to be done about what those items would be, especially the indigenous ones.
All right. Well, thank you.
Hello, we're group 2. My name is Will Cagle. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I'm Ashley Fritz, I'm from Middleton, Wisconsin.
Hi, I'm Lydia DeBush, and I'm from Green Bay.
So our project here is Capitol View Gardens. The name is similar to the last group. Great minds do think alike, I would like to think. We'll start with our vision statement here. So Capitol View Park transforms the prior San Damiano property into a stimulating and inviting space, bursting with activity and vitality. Exceptional event spaces empower countless types of opportunities for recreation as the site strives to become a beacon and the center of Monona's vivacity, defining the city's blissful spirit. Capitol View Park also aims to enhance its different wildlife habitats as it fosters biodiversity for different wildlife and also vegetation. And then also exemplifying ecological awareness, integrating bioretention systems that are already existing on the site, enhancing those for different stormwater holding capacities, and thus keeping our lakes clean and things like that.
We have 5 main goals for our project, and those include increasing the ecological awareness and creating more of a habitat for birds, because we know birding is something that's very currently used at the site. And we also wanted to integrate the Monona bike loop into our site. We noticed that there was a missing link, and this would just be a great place to include on that bike loop. And we also wanted to enhance the beach and boating experiences because this is a popular spot for boaters to come and park. But we also wanted to bring that experience onto the land a bit more. We also wanted to create a multi-use event space that could generate revenue for the community and also could just become the heart and soul of the community. And then we also wanted to remediate and expand the existing stormwater system into a larger bioretention that will keep the lakes clean and healthy.
Alright, so to talk through the site, first we have several overlooks to tie in the amazing views, as Capitol View is our title. So there's an overlook right here, and then we have formal gardens as we created an event space. There's also our parking here, which fits about 60 spots. It's in the circulation, it's like a loop type circulation, so you come in here and you can turn through here, or you can go over here to drop off people for the whatever event may be happening, and then you can also circle back through this way. Parking goes both ways. Also then we have overflow parking, as events will accommodate a lot more people versus your day-to-day capacity. So this will be in reinforced paving, so it will look like grass, but there'll be pavers through there to support parked cars. There will be public restrooms over here by the adventure playgrounds, as that where typically day-to-day people will be with their kids, hanging out, having a good time. We have a gazebo and amphitheater here for the event space, along with the event lawn, and then the event building, which is not the current building that is on site, but we are proposing to keep about 50% of the materials from the building to be incorporated into the new one. There's also a boathouse down here, which will tie in the Holy Bay area where everyone docks up their boats in the summer, and then they can come in here, get some food, or whatever else, they just need a shelter or whatever. Then there's the nature escape pathway, which is through here. We are proposing to kind of naturalize the site again, bring in a lot more trees, and get rid of some of that lawn space. And then we have the Eagle Lookout, which is right here, coming off of the nature playground. So these are actually all a treehouse system, more like treehouse, like platform type things. And then you can extend through the lookout right there to get a good view of the site. There's a boardwalk here through the bioretention basin, and that accesses to the street here as well. There's a current bioretention here, but we are proposing to expand it, follow the natural grade of the site. And then last, Lake Monona, which is kind of where all our thing is based off of.
So On this board, we break down our site into 3 main zones. The nature recreation zone here in blue, the beach recreation zone in orange, and then the event space here in red, which includes the part of both the house and the part across from the house in the center of the path. This diagram shows the main circulations of the path. In blue are the primary, secondary, and tertiary paths, but the main thing that's important from this is the Monona bike loop path through the site. It has its own dedicated path for part of the site, and then it goes through the nature recreation zone, through the woodland, and then over the boardwalk and out. And that connection can be seen larger here. This is the connection that we made through the site, and it fills in a very large missing link that takes you off the water, and we're proposing that it goes through our site and remains a true lake loop. Here you can see the views of our site. We were able to highlight these stars are capital views. The position of the site is very unique and it has really great views of the Capitol, so we wanted to make sure that we had as many Capitol views as possible, as well as many lake views, and then some screen views of the estate from the road, so that people know it's there and are a lot more welcomed to the site than they are currently. And then through this, we were able to increase the storage capacity of the bioretention basin by like 400%, which is just a huge increase, especially because it's the city of Madison's water, so we just want to make sure that there's enough room for it. And then we were able to add about a mile of pedestrian paths through the site, which is an increase by 280%. And then we were also able to decrease the turf area by 63%, so that there is a lot more ability for the stormwater to be absorbed by the ground, and a lot less maintenance.
And then finally, we have this render here. It is of 2 boys sitting on the rocks right on the lake. So we really want to create that connection, bolden that connection to Lake Monona. I think this render really encapsulates all the goals and objectives that we're looking at through the design of this whole process. Although we have all these big ideas, such as the boathouse and the event structure, what it really comes down to is the human connections made in our park.
All right, so now we'll go into the different focus areas. I focused on the event space. This is kind of based off of a formal garden, and how formal gardens work is there's usually 2 axes. So the first axis runs through the middle here, kind of connecting the whole site to the water, and then the other one incorporates the neighborhood with like the other built structures of the site. This might be a little small to see, but this view runs down this axis. So you can see there's different built structures all the way to the lake to kind of just like concentrate that view to the water. There will be primarily plantings in these 2 sections. Hydrangeas, very like heavy on the flowering shrubs, and then this space will be open. And then all the paths you can connect all the way through. This would be the gazebo is kind of like a way for different like concerts or just like events to be held outside. This is also set up if the possibility of like weddings wanted to be rented out. There's like kind of like set up in front of the water with the arbor, while there's seating in here in the lawn space. And then let's see. Oh, and this is a potential like possibility of a building that could be there's a lot of really cool glass that's in the original building, so we propose to keep that glass and incorporate it into the new building. So a lot of like sunroom type areas in the new building as well. Also kind of like restoring the shoreline with the rocks and plantings and stuff like that.
Okay, then moving on to the next interest area. This is the boathouse and restaurant shown here. So a quick vision statement for this specific area. Capitol View Gardens Boathouse and Restaurant revolutionizes the entertainment and food offerings available on Lake Monona through cutting-edge design and 360 accessibility from both the land and the water. The boathouse strives to become the pinnacle of Monona while providing citizens with quality food in a euphorically unique location. So looking at this plan view here, you see the boathouse. It actually juts off into Lake Monona, so it really gives some interesting views and opportunities for people to eat on the patio, and you're actually over the water. Under that, there is some different routes here that are ADA accessible as well, and then also offer boat parking as well, talking about that 360 accessibility. So we really just want to create a really cool area, an emphasis on Lake Monona that, yeah, once again, very accessible from both ways. So you have people boating, quick stop for a bite to eat, stop here, and then also we have this beach as well, northeast of the boathouse. So really creating an area, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Peninsula Park, indoor counting, but kind of creating a space similar to that. Moving on, here's some section views from the front of the boathouse. So I wanted to develop like an alley that really creates a sense of space and also generates views right towards the front of the boathouse. So we have the alley of trees and then lights overhead as well. So really just want to create this space to be very exciting in both the daytime and also nighttime attraction as well. And yeah.
Okay, my focus area was the nature recreation area, which I'm calling a Woodland Adventure. It consists of a raised treehouse boardwalk, which is an immersive birding experience, the wetland, and the exploration trails. The goals of my design were to introduce native species, to increase and attract wildlife, and to create a biofiltration system to better handle the stormwater. I wanted to foster an immersive experience for the birding, just to be totally immersive in nature, so that's a very unique experience about the site. I also wanted to utilize a hierarchy of spaces to allow for active and passive recreation to occur harmoniously. And I wanted to create curated birdhouses to attract a variety of species and increase nesting sites. So in the biofiltration wetland, I created a planting plan that includes a wet prairie mix, which will have a bit more flowers and be a bit more pleasing to look at, and then a wet grassland mix, which can be found along all sides of the wetland, and also an emergent wetland mix, just to increase the amount of natural species, to better take pollutants and sediment out of the water. The raised boardwalk features seating and telescopes to look throughout the site at the birds and at the also out to the lake, which you can see in this picture here. It connects to two nature playgrounds. One of them can be seen here, features a lot more slides and multiple levels. It's tailored a bit more for younger people, and this portion of the birdhouse, or this portion of the treehouse, is a lot more aimed for children and for play. Whereas on this side, it is a bit more for the birding experience and is less for active play. But the playground underneath here can be seen here. Because it features a lot of seatings and a bit more mature play items, it can also be used as an outdoor classroom and is a bit more experience for all ages. Throughout the site, you can find birdhouses that will just create specialized places for species and just increase the overall birding experience of the site. And then this also is a section of the boardwalk area, just showing the large increase in space and ability to collect stormwater, as well as the connection to the Monona bike loop. So with that, are there any questions?
How do you see the blending of your nature area with your boathouse, your vibrant restaurant area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we were really thinking, so our first idea in the whole design process was to really create an event space. Jake talked about generating some type of revenue because it was such an expensive cost. So we thought immediately right off the bat, creating an event space and then also like a restaurant and a boathouse like that. But also, we looked at the northernmost part of the site and we saw the retention pond that's already there. And we thought that was a really good opportunity to kind of build upon that. So spreading that nature and then that woodland area as well that was existing and spreading that and kind of almost trying to blend that into some of the more commercial aspects of our site.
Yeah, we definitely included like a pretty heavy vegetation buffer right there. So if people are coming for more of the calming, peaceful like experience, they can like still get that over here in case there are events going on over here. It's kind of like a dual site.
Yeah, additionally, like we have a hierarchy of paths, so you can kind of see here, this is more of a gravel path that would be for exploring, and then this is like kind of the main recreation path, and then lower we have a fully accessible boardwalk on the beach, so that kind of separates the three areas for being like the nature recreation, further exploration, and then the beachside boardwalk.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Mike. I'm from Seabrook, Wisconsin.
My name is Emily. I'm from Libertyville, Illinois.
I'm Maggie. I'm from the Twin Cities.
So this is the Alice House Folk School. The Alice House Folk School creates an intergenerational connection and education through community-based learning experiences and year-round events. It connects the Monona area to traditional practices of land management crafts and games. This site connects to the rich history of the Alice family home and the traditions of the Ho-Chunk people who resided here before us. Goals for this design were to create equitable access to all programs within the site, restore natural ecosystems, create a space that fosters intergenerational community camaraderie, restore edge conditions to create an accessible shoreline along Lake Monona, and use of green infrastructure to manage runoff. So our design increases pedestrian paths by 600%, decreases turf grass by 84%, and then decreases the total annual runoff by 351%.
And so for our framework plan, right away we had to make space for a big space for open lawn, multi-seasonal events, including Snow Snake by the Ho-Chunk people would be a key event during the winter, for example, because we wanted to keep the site, preserve the historic legacy of the site itself. The next area is the beach and facilities. There's a couple sheds on the site itself with this section here. Right down here, having space for storage, bathrooms, and other facilities, looking out to the water, having a sandy beach, because currently it is more a rocky surface itself. And then next we have a non-motorized boat launch, or can be used for fishing as well, events, and having parking right here to, as you come in, smaller parking area for loading boats into the water, or not large boats, but kayaks, canoes, kind of tying into the Holy Bay itself. And so then for the next element is the Bird's Nest Playground, which is in the center of the site, which we'll focus on later. in the project, but having a playground space for the school itself, the folk school, having space for the kids, and then next we have an overlook cutting through, kind of near the site. This is kind of outlining the connection to the shore right here with itself. The building kind of drooping down, and then having an ADA ramp go all the way down to connect to the shore, and then connecting all the way to the beach itself, and just taking advantage of the views of Lake Winona.
And so then continuing with this, number 6 here, which is this area here, is some semi-private seating, which can be seen in here in this perspective. And then we're also vegetating this area more heavily, and while it's going to provide that semi-private seating experience, it's also going to double as a buffer to those homes that border the site. 7 is these gardens, which are featured on the last board there. And those gardens are going to have 3 different types of gardens, as well as seating, storage, a swale that runs across the road to catch any runoff coming from Winona Drive before it would hit the plants, as well as getting that runoff before it makes its way to the lake. And then in number 8, we have the forest trails. So that's kind of the northern end of the site, which was already more heavily wooded, and we're proposing to continue to make that canopy cover more dense, and adding nature paths, a little section of relief where there would be seating, a fire pit, and that would really help with like the bird watching and promoting those natural habitats of the animals that are present on the site, which if you take a look at the inventory boards is a little brief on those. And then number 9 is a fishing pier, which would be kind of near this wetland in the forest. And here it would be a little quiet relief for fishing. We're proposing this would be a little wider. It would be in permanently throughout the year, as it would be in a hard spot to kind of pull it out for the winters. And then number 10 is the sediment filtration pond, which can be seen in this section here at the bottom. And so here we're proposing 3 different ponds. So the first is this one, where that culvert comes out, and this would be the largest of the 3 ponds, and each pond would filter a different size of sediment. So the largest pond would be the biggest chunks of sediment, and then the second would be the next size, the third would be the smallest. And using these ponds to kind of break up the amount of water that's coming into the site, as well as planting it with wetland around so that it could kind of seep out further should there be larger floods. And then using those ponds as kind of a feature on our site, so then as now on the site there's just like a big hole, and so creating that as an element and bringing it into the design with a platform here, which you can see here, could be used to teach about the different wetland plants and wetland animals, as well as a boardwalk that runs through this area and connects into that sidewalk that runs along Winona Drive. So looking more closely at that is this section here, and you can see here is that sidewalk as well as a little buffer before the street. So here are the wetland plants. Things would run into this pond. This kind of platform touches all 3 ponds, so you could kind of get an immersive experience. And then this boardwalk here that would be right here, kind of connecting into that fishing pier and then into the more forested, dense area.
So this diagram here shows the lighting on the site. We thought that the area surrounding the house would be lit at night, and then we wanted to keep the more natural areas dark at night. So these 3 types of lighting are dark sky friendly. Around the carriage path and the parking lot and the sidewalk outside the house would have the street lights. The path connecting the house to the overlook and the ramp would have this in-ground lighting, and then the overlook and the porch would have these string lights, and then the path through the woods would be lit with these stumps, which are lit from the inside.
So next, looking at the folk school classes and the kind of curriculum that could happen here and connecting that with key elements on our site. So some things like summer camp could happen all over the site, but focusing on our nature playground area and the house, bird watching, and other natural things like mushroom foraging or wild plants would happen in the wooded area. Things like beekeeping and master gardening, vegetable gardening, and fruit tree grafting would happen in these gardens. And then also jam making would happen between like the gardens and the house. And then things that could happen all over the site, like drawing and photography, both like focused near the house and then allowing people to spread out across the site and explore. And then things with more traditional roots like knitting, sewing, embroidery, weaving, those could happen within the site, and then allowing them to spread into those overlooks, the lawn spaces, the private seating. And then a big thing like forest meditation and other things like that could happen in the forest in those little private seating nooks that we've created.
For circulation, as far as revitalizing the carriage path itself, that'd be the primary form of circulation running through the site, as well as cutting through the middle, more secondary paths with the open lawn space near the center, kind of wrapping around the natural areas. But near the forest trails, there's more tertiary pathways breaking off, creating more intimate settings for visitors to utilize. And yeah.
Okay, so I chose to focus on the southwestern part of the site, just outside the house. Goals for this area were to improve shoreline conditions, increase pedestrian paths, and provide space for various park activities. So in the plan you can see there's a flexible lawn space right here, a larger fire pit, there's the ramp to the shore, there's a landing on the ramp with a smaller fire pit, there's the porch, the overlook, and then the seating areas in the woods along with the maintenance shed. And this diagram just shows how this area of the site could be used in different ways. For example, an outdoor class could take place on the overlook, and then a concert could take place off the patio, and then a wedding ceremony could take place in the flexible lawn space. This section cuts through right here and shows the overlook, which goes out over the water and is half covered. This image shows how the overlook is spacious and has room for different activities such as an outdoor class. And then this image right here shows one of the seating areas in the woods with a fire pit, and then you can also see the view of the lake and the overlook.
For our next focus area, we were focusing on the bird's nest playground, kind of tying into the birding theme of the natural wildlife that's already present there, providing opportunities of adventure play for students and community members alike, enhancing the sight lines through the site, and kind of connecting to the water, repurposing existing logs and wood that were present on the site already, just kind of like using a cost-effective solution. As well as connecting the city of Monona to the natural landscape and wildlife present already, and drawing visitors into the San Damiano property from the road. So right away, the main element in the area itself is the bird's nest treehouse, which you can see in this section here, kind of overlooking the entire site, providing views over existing vegetation, but also kind of creating a setting to be amongst the trees and kind of tie into that natural theme. And next we have some log slides kind of running through, kind of using the logs present already to make these, or purchasing other like online slides or anything, but just providing opportunities for students and community members for recreation, as you can see here. Next, there's some log kind of swing sets, as well as adventure play was a big thing to utilize for existing students to kind of, as you can see here, building their own area to play in and kind of tapping into having them learn that about. But, and then covered seating area, kind of for parents or for teachers alike from the folk school to view the children or community members from having a sight through the entire area itself. And then having some log tunnels as well for them to crawl through and kind of formulate the circulation through the area itself. As far as, again, the treehouse itself, this is a nice little diagram, kind of using the branches present on the site, but then having like a wood base on the interior to form around, it's a 13-foot high, 20-foot wide base structure to have ladders climb into that and provide an intimate space for users alike, and as well as including various bird feeders, bird houses throughout the site itself to attract local wildlife, as well as a protective fence that could be accessed through a key to keep out unwanted visitors or during after hours to avoid any after hour activity.
So finally is the learning gardens. You would enter through this path that's adjacent to the carriage path, which we do have running through the site. And as you enter into the formal gardens, which on these axes will lead you into the seating area, which is pictured here. So in the seating area, having both a tool shed and a material shed to give people having resources on site to give people the opportunity to just come and use these gardens, as well as having opportunities to sit and gather with people. And then having this being a small outdoor kitchen, nothing super fancy, like a stovetop. People can make tea and they can enjoy the gardens. And on the other side, having workbenches where if there's been a harvest or there's a floral arranging class, you can have that space to kind of spread out materials and work with what's on the site. Moving back towards the site, at the very far end, bordering that wetland, we have bee houses. And then surrounding those, we have this wildflower beds, which would be a seed mix and kind of allowing them to kind of mix and mingle, nothing really formal, giving a prairie feeling, with also these organic beds and paths, which you can see in here, having a few seating options and mixing in some trees for shade, as well as feathering this tree-lined edge, which these would all be fruit trees. And then underneath the fruit trees, having a meadow mix, which promotes pollination from pollinators to both the fruit trees and the surrounding plants. And then bordering the woodland area, we have a vegetable garden here with 2 herb gardens as well. Those would be raised beds to make them more accessible for people. And then this little triangle being a composting area. Throughout here, we have 2 wider paths like this and this, and that would give accessibility for people bringing in materials like dirt, mulch, those kinds of things. And then giving it places to drop them off, like here, leaving small open spaces where then people could grab wheelbarrows and those sort of things, which would be kept in the tool shed, as you can see in this section here. And then that swale I talked about earlier to collect the runoff from Monona Drive before hitting the fruit trees and the wildflowers. This section runs directly like that, and here you can kind of see the edge conditions. So this is that forested edge as you move into the vegetable gardens, through that central seating area, and then the meadow, the swale, and the sidewalk. Here in the planting diagram, you can kind of see a breakdown of the types of plants that would be in each area. And then this is more of a blown up look at one of the mixes. So this isn't all of the plants that are in the wildflower mix, but I picked some key species. So it'd be a mix of both grasses and plants. Some of the big grasses would be like big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, Canadian wild rye, and then some notable flowers would be things like allium, butterfly bush, prairie blazing star, common evening primrose, and other beautiful native plants to Wisconsin. And so with that, that was our Alice House Folk School. Are there any questions?
Could you explain a little bit more about the swale along the
looks like and how it functions
Mm-hmm.
exactly?
So it's a little small here, but the swale is like a big scoop out of the ground, and so water will run either way, and those are like wetland plants that are designed to suck up that water, and it'll kind of trap it, and then instead of like puddling, those plants will remain alive and not die while their roots are really wet, and it's giving it a chance to evaporate.
So how wide is that green space between the road and your garden?
This swale is 6 feet wide.
6?
6? No, wait, that's wrong. It was 10 feet wide.
10 feet. Okay. So that kind of feature could work along the roadway anywhere. Really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had another question.
Yeah.
And this is for you. When you're talking about shoreline erosion, what exactly is going on now that you would work with to decrease that erosion? I know you said you wanted to decrease shoreline erosion, but I wasn't quite sure how you would go about that.
Yeah, so, well, I wanted to improve the shoreline conditions because have you been out there before?
I have.
Okay, right now it's like kind of hard to walk along. It's messy, a lot of debris and stuff. So more like cleaning that up. And then like along here and then on other parts of the site using plants that would help control erosion, but like ones with deep rooting systems, I guess, to hold in the dirt, because I know when we went we saw that there was some erosion on top of just like the debris. So yeah, cleaning that up, and then also in another spot on the site right here, we on our beach area just proposed that it would be sand. So then that's something more comfortable for people to be on to enjoy the water.
Okay, and you said, what was it, 300 or 400% shoreline erosion decrease or something like that in the area you're working in?
Yeah, so 351% decrease in total annual runoff.
So that would just be because of the area you're working on, that southwest quad.
That's for the entire site itself. That's for like land cover, and just that's like the main factor as far as like a coefficient for runoff. But yeah.
I was gonna say, like, because we're decreasing the lawn so much and planting that in with native meadow plantings, those root systems go a lot deeper and collect a lot more water than traditional, like, bluegrass lawns do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a multiple number of factors.
Yeah.
Going to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Might need that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Ethan. I'm from Jupiter, Florida.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm from Stillwater, Minnesota.
Hi, I'm Dana. I'm from Columbia, but I grew up mostly in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So this is our Holy Bay Park. For our vision, the Holy Bay Park offers the city of Monona a natural retreat that revitalizes the city's cultural connection to the lake. The park provides a multi-use space and exciting atmosphere for all demographics. Increasing public access and providing a multiple-use pass system, the lakefront works with existing geography to connect the community to the beautiful landscape of Lake Monona. The park envisions a sustainable green space, a healthful environment, and a commercially viable place.
So for our goals of our park is to create a multi-use recreational space that offers a healthful and exciting atmosphere, improved accessibility to the lakefront, revitalize an intimate relationship between the city of Monona and Lake Monona, offer a commercially viable public green space, and create appropriate and useful built structures. So to move on to our framework plan, to begin with, we have a parking lot that offers 95 spots, 10 of those being handicap. Our wetland garden along the runoff from the city of Monona. Our recreational courts that include a basketball court, a tennis court, and an open space for tossing the ball or whatever you might want to be doing. For number 4 is our carriage path. We are not allowing vehicle use for that. That will be a pedestrian pathway to reach the proposed site. Number 5 is our picnic structure and restrooms that are right across the beach to allow quick access. For number 7, we have a boardwalk that runs along the beach all the way to our proposed terrace. And last, our nature playground that will be composed of the ash trees that are being cut down currently. And lastly, our event center that is replacing the San Damiano house.
Moving on from there, we have a service drop-off right here that allows access for service and emergency vehicles. So trucks dropping off beer for the beer cart, food for the concessions. And then we are proposing to extend this carriage path, but keep this same line that it has, and creating this access right here. Moving on from the event center, it goes to this terrace area, which has a pier and boat dock. So that'll be an interactive space, eventful, and people can gather there and enjoy the lake views. Moving on from that is the overlook right here, which is a more secluded area, bordered by some canopy. And then moving on is right here we have our community gardens, which we know that the site right now, they have community gardens right here, and people like to utilize that. So we moved over here. Here is a bike access that connects to this bike path right here. So when you're entering or exiting, you'd use this carriage path and then take this for the bike. And then we are keeping the maintenance building, and then lastly the service entrance and exit. So then moving on from that, we have our vegetation diagram, which we wanted to replace the existing lawn and turf, so we added 4 new mixes. We have a prairie mix here in this yellow, darker yellow, and then a wetland mix up top over here, and then woodland perennial mix right here, and perennial wildflower mix. We wanted to take away all the lawn and add all these mixes because it adds a lot of biodiversity to the site, brings in a lot of insects, birds, butterflies, and makes the site very enjoyable and nature feeling.
For our canopy diagram, we calculated that there is currently 80 to 83% canopy coverage, and with our new design, there's going to be approximately 73% canopy coverage. So there is a reduction, and the proposal is to reuse those canopy trees to build our nature playground.
And then moving on to our pathways and circulation diagram. So one of the first things that we wanted to do was kind of change up the vehicle circulation. So we added sort of like a turn lane to come into the parking lot, so there's no like backup with vehicle traffic. Something else that we did is we connected the existing like Monona bike loop, and we had it run through our site and come out through like this neighborhood instead of like kind of going through here. It would just be better, and it would also invite more people to use our site. We have a boardwalk that's running along the shore and along the beach. What else? Most of our other paths are pedestrian paths. Just the bike and pedestrian path is the one that runs through the site. And then we kept the carriage path, and that one leads straight to our proposed building. And then as well as for some other roads, something that we proposed is like the service access roundabout that would take cars straight to the building. So like Matt said, any types of services, people bringing food, things like that. And also allows for like emergency vehicles to have access to the site.
Below we have our section cut of our overlook. The overlook is placed just south of the terrace, and it offers panoramic views of the city, the capital, and the entire lake.
So moving on, this is our proposed building. So what we're gonna do is get rid of the existing building, and because the existing building is sort of like here, and then we had this facing the carriage path, so it just leads straight to it. What we really propose is sort of like a flexible event space that would really help the park gain some revenue. So some potential uses were like, our first proposal was to kind of have like a beer and wine garden, but that would obviously be changed for events and things. So I think it'd be a great wedding venue for like a wedding reception, just a general event space, a small concert venue, because we do, it's a little hard to see, but we did propose like a small stage. Some movable tables and chairs, so you can move things around depending on what type of event you're having. There's also a combination of like the indoor-outdoor spaces. So like I said, it is a building, so you could have an event inside, outside, things like that, and then also patio and lawn space. And so some things like, let's say like a movie night, you could put like a projector up on the stage. People could set up like their blankets, their lawn chairs out on the lawn, things like that. Small concerts, and then in the building, we were thinking having like some type of concessions or restaurants to help, fuel the people in the park. And just some features in this area are plantings, the service access in the back, the small stage, movable tables and chairs, things like that. I wanted to provide sort of like an evening rendering so you could see what the space would look like at night. There's a lot of lighting, like some string lights. There'd be lights up here, sort of like along the roof. It kind of hangs over, as well as some lights like in the plantings, and then along this pathway, and some street lamps that would provide some nice lighting. Feels like a nice inviting space even at night. And then, so there's two kind of main spaces here. I hate that this is so small. But there's like the front main area, which is this, and then there's like a side space. This gives us like a better view of it. So this is more like tucked away, smaller, feels more private, more intimate. And I think it'd be nice, you could have like two different events going on, maybe like a party, a small little birthday party here, and then some sort of like larger event at the front. Or just like you can keep this one running if someone's having an event here. It's just a nice little space. So yeah, very flexible, and that's what I really wanted to do, so that you have the flexibility to really do anything with the space and make it usable, feasible, and really make good money with it for the park.
Our second feature proposal is the terrace. The terrace is also intended to be a social atmosphere. The dock hosts about 10 boats comfortably. It has an ADA ramp, as you can see down here, so it creates an accessible point for whoever would like to use it, as well as the access from the beach. This would be the wraparound boardwalk that leads you to the beach. The planters that step down act as kind of like retention of stormwater, so that all the water that flushes off the top of the surface of the terrace does not just go straight run into the lake. It also provides quick access for kayakers to come along and reach into the park itself, and the pier also is connected to the flexible event space. As you can see over here in our plan view, it leads you directly through a path to the event space.
All right, moving on to the last focus area. This focus area is the picnic and beach area, labeled as the beach experience. The beach experience at Holy Bay Park provides a picnic structure with table seating that can be used for group gatherings, board games with friends, or just a place to rest and get away from the sun. The space is nestled between a canopy of trees and native plantings, which you can see right here, and then the canopy. And the sandy beach that activates the once rocky shoreline and makes it easier to enjoy the lake and swim and do other activities. The open lawn provides opportunities for sunbathing, reading, throwing around the frisbee, and then also has the boardwalk that connects to the terrace. So for this view, you can see the picnic structure. People are sitting and enjoying the space. And you can see in the background the kind of skyline of Madison, so this would create good views. It can be active space, it can be a resting space. Right here is a section where you can see the Lake Monona going up to the beach and this gradual incline to the flat pavilion patio area, and also the plant beds right here. And I think this view gives a great view of the materials of the stone boardwalk and the wood and natural colors that fit into the canopy of trees and natural plantings. Thank you. Any questions?
I was wondering about Holy Bay. Was that a name that existed, or did you create that?
It's existing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We named it, there's the Holy Bay right there. That exists.
That's the name of the bay?
So the area where the boats tie up in the summertime is commonly referred to as Holy Bay by the motorized boaters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we thought that would fit in the adjacent park.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have one more question. With parking, if your parking space for 95 cars is a one-directional parking lot, do you need less width for angle parking versus straight-in parking?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know what the width would be for angle parking versus straight-in parking? How much of a difference, how much less space you would need to use up?
For straight in, we designed the parking lot to be 10 feet wide, each stall. I'm going to assume that a diagonal.
And I'm looking from the curb to kind of curb to curb, you know, so if you're pulling straight in, you tend to need a little more width because you're swinging around. If it's an angle on a one-way parking lot, do you know what that would be?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know we try to provide enough room in the lane right here. I think it was 20 feet. So we try to make enough room for that. But
yeah, it could certainly be smaller if
How long is your stall? Yeah.
How long is the stall? 20 feet.
Okay, so you have 60 feet overall.
60 feet overall.
That's quite long. I think that's.
One-way parking.
Well, that's
drive in, drive out.
Yours is two-way, is that what, yours is two-way?
Nope.
Through, or is it one-way? Okay.
Straight shot.
You could probably add near up to this one a little bit. That'd be 15 to 20.
Any other questions, comments?
All right.
There was so much stuff I wanted to say.
Thank you for joining us today. This was their first time. This was their first time presenting in person. I mean, given the past 2 years of the pandemic, everything's been online. So a lot of this project was doing stuff both as a group, learning how to work together as a group, doing stuff individually, coordinating all the drawings that you see up here between each other, making sure that they feel like one project versus not just someone's individual board. And again, they spent about 3.5 weeks from, it was trace on paper, if you would have seen it with Jake 3.5 weeks ago. So the amount of work that they developed to end the semester is tremendous. So I just want to give them a round of applause too, again, for all the hard work they've done this semester. So, all right, thanks guys. And good luck with it. I know you guys are kicking off the project, so you're going to have consultants soon, so hopefully this spurred some ideas about how you can utilize the shoreline, the different program elements you can integrate into it, from birding, thinking about parking, how much do you actually need? Is it only 30? Or you saw here in one of them it's 90? Do you provide new access points that take a look at not only along the main drive here, but into other parts of the neighborhood? Do you provide boat access points off the water too? Do you keep the building? Do you remove the building and do something new? And then also taking a look at all the different cultural artifacts which you guys are in the process of identifying through all kinds of analysis. So, all right, I'll turn it over to Jake then.
Yeah, just for the students, thank you for taking the time and effort. I think your energy and the amount of work that you did in a short amount of time was amazing. I'm always like, holy cow, you guys could draw some really pretty pictures and put things together and think about the space. And for some of our committee members and elected officials here, you notice there was a variance, right, of kind of passive recreation to highly anticipated. And I think this will be really helpful as we kick off the project in reference to about, sometimes it's like, I don't like that, but I like this, versus what do you envision in a future space. So this will be beneficial, I think, to the process. And again, these are junior level students at UW. And so I think the effort and the presentation today was excellent. So I very much appreciate the time that you guys did. And thanks for coming. If we can keep you for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, you guys, to answer some questions on your overall plan from some of the members, that would be awesome for lunch. So thank you guys.